Okay, now that you have brainstormed, I want you to do something to kind of distill this. So after your 7 minutes of brainstorming, so tapos na yan, determine as a group your top 3 mentoring principles. What did you think are the most important 3 principles that you came up with in your group? Okay? Is that clear? Claro ba? Okay, so choose 3. After you choose the 3, I want you to write those 3 on a card. However, don't write the whole sentence. I want you to write one word. So summarize the principle in one word and write that word on the card. Okay, is that clear? So choose the top 3 principles and then choose one word that describes that principle and write that word on a card. So each group should have 3 cards, each with one word. Got it? Now, once you have your 3 words, how many of you have 3 words? You have your 3 words? Okay. When you have your 3 words, I want you to go to the nearest black it's not a blackboard, but it's a blackboard. Go to the nearest blackboard and put your 3 words on the board. Okay, so those in the back, you go to that side. Those that are closer to the front, dito. Those that are here in the front, dito sana sa harap. Those in the back, go to that side. Okay? Now what I need is I need to have a representative from each group to volunteer. Hello? We need a representative. Don't worry, madali lang to. What you're going to do is that you're going to go to the board and I want you to organize the words into groups because you may find they're very similar. So maybe the words that other people use are the same words your group used. So group them together, like maybe you said Christ-like, okay? So all of the things that are like Christ, you put in one group. All of the things are maybe encourager, put in one group, okay? So if you are appointed as your group leader, go to the board and help group the words into like organized groupings. Gets nyo? Asa na nga ng mga ibang group representatives. So go to the board and try to group the words into categories. Okay, let me point to what these guys have done so far, and then we will go to the other one after this. They have grouped things into several key groups, okay? So we have one, most of them are encourager or encouragement. One is intentional. One is spirit-filled or Christ-like. One is kind of kalat, hindi ko alam yun. But tapos faithful. Okay, this one is many different qualities, but humility is one of them. So very, although humility, iba yung humility kaysa servant heart, humility, yeah. So, okay, those are all good. So kind of general characteristics. But if I can point out, intentional. So it was something that they did intentionally to help someone to grow. Would you agree that's a good principle? Okay. Yeah, kasi galing sa inyo eh. Okay. Tapos dito, yung spirit-filled or Christ-like. Is that important? Okay, very important. Encouraging. Is that important? You want to build up other people. I think yung sa kabila, they're not listening, only the ones here. Kasi hindi galing sa kanila yan eh. And then also faithful, okay? They are consistent in doing what they are asked to do. So those are principles that we can learn. And it's interesting that many of the groups came up with the same principles. Now let me look over here. Mukhang nahihirapan sila kasi iba-ibang eh. Too many cooks spoil the broth. Ang dami nyo eh. Okay, let's see what you came up with. Don't go away. Parang takot, no? Okay, so we have spirit-filled, humility, Christ-like, servant. So yung category na yan. Generous, okay, because you guys remember from Barnabas, he gave away his property, okay? And if you want to be an encourager, isn't it encouraging if they give you your property? Diba? That's very encouraging, okay? Um, Passionate, boldness, that's good. Patience, perseverance, intentional, okay? A lot of people also on that side saw that it's important to be intentional. Ito, encourager. Okay, this is all encourager. So parang the most consistent we see is the intentional, the encourager, also yung humility and spirit-filled. Those are things that are very consistent. Patience. So all of these, I think as you look at the different characteristics, thank you, you guys can sit. All of those qualities are very important. I want you to take note of those because if you want to be a good mentor, you also need to have those qualities. You need to be Christ-like. You need to be spirit-filled. You need to be humble. You need to be encouraging to other people. You need to be intentional with them. So these are all things that are very important if you want to encourage others to grow. So very well done. Okay, we'll go to the next thing. Let me just point out very quickly that there are different forms of mentoring. Mentoring can be done in different ways. If you are a discipler, you are a mentor. That's one way of mentoring people, but it's not the only way. And if you are a good discipler, you also should be a good mentor. There's another term they call spiritual guide. A spiritual guide is someone that helps you to discern God's will for your life. So it's somebody that you can bounce ideas off. They're considering a different option, and you help them to discern where they should be headed in life. Okay? Next week, we'll be talking about coaching. Coaching is a particular skill, which, by the way, is becoming very popular even in secular leadership. But it's not what you think of like a basketball coach. It's a different kind of skill. Next week, we will be talking about how to do that. A teacher can also be a mentor. You know, if you think back on the people that influenced you in your life, maybe some of you, it was one of your teachers that really impacted you. Anybody use a teacher as somebody that impacted you in your life? Wala. Isa lang. Wow, you must have had terrible teachers. But many times, just the example and model of a teacher, somebody that gave you an encouragement when you were down or didn't think that you could do it, teachers can do that. A counselor, when you're struggling with something and you need somebody that can help you through that difficulty, a counselor can be a mentor. An interesting kind of mentor is what is called a sponsor. Now, this isn't somebody that pays your way to go to a trip or something like that. A sponsor is someone that introduces you into something that you need introduction into. That's what Paul had done to him by Barnabas. Barnabas needed an introduction to the apostles. He needed a sponsor to say, this guy is okay. You need to work together with him. I know there have been times in the past, for me, somebody that knew somebody that I needed to connect with, somebody that was important for my future. I didn't know the person, but there was somebody else that I knew that could introduce me. That happened to me here in CCF. There was a guy by the name of Henry Tan. He was my boss in IGSL, and he was involved with CCF. And he knew Pastor Peter and some of the other elders, and he got me involved in training. And eventually it was Henry that introduced me in such a way that they considered, hey, maybe this guy could be a good elder. So it was through the introduction of somebody, the sponsorship of someone else, that I was able to take leadership. Maybe you know people in your group that are very gifted and probably should be involved in a ministry, and you know the ministry head. You can introduce them to that person so that they can get involved. So being a sponsor is allowing people to make the right connections to be able to go further in their leadership. A contemporary model, I would say probably many of us would look at Pastor Peter as a model of what we want to be like as a leader. That person, even if we don't know them well, can be a mentor to us, okay? A historical model. This is somebody that maybe lived in the past, and you read biographies. You know, my favorite missionary biography that made a great impact on me, the guy's name is terrible, but his name is C.T. Studd, okay? C.T. Studd was a cricket player in England back in the 1800s. He was one of the most famous cricket players of his age. And he played for the British national team, which was the best cricket team in the world at the time. But God got a hold of him, and he became a missionary. First, he went to China, then he went to India, then he went to Africa. I think he was the first missionary that had successful ministry in all three of those places. Well, guess what? When I became a missionary, I thought, I want to do the same thing. And in a way, it's because C.T. Studd was my model, my mentor, even though he was dead for many years before I became a missionary. And sometimes God just deals with you directly. God is the one that arranges a connection with someone that you never even intended to meet, and you just meet the person. Maybe it's just a one-off thing, but they have a word of encouragement or exhortation or insight for you. And maybe just at that time, that right moment, God leads that person to you. Have you ever had that experience where you met somebody just at the right time who gave you just that word of encouragement that you needed? That's a God thing. That's something that he does. Now, very briefly, let me just say that as we talk about types of mentoring, there are formal mentors. In other words, they have some position in our lives. And then there are informal mentors. They're just people that God uses to be able to encourage us. Formally, we talk about like a D12 leader or a D group leader. We have a curriculum. They're going through GLC material with you. They have goals for you to help you grow. You meet on a regular basis, and there's a formal program, and you can assess progress. So a discipler in a D group is in a way a formal mentor. But there's also informal mentors, like a mature friend, somebody that you just like hanging out with because they seem to have wisdom, okay? It may be just occasionally. You don't see them often, and yet that person has been able to encourage you. There's no definite purpose or program, and it may not last for a long time. It may be just once in a while that you get together. There's a number of people that I have in my life that I meet together with. It may only happen once a year or once every 2 years, but every time I come away encouraged because they have spoken into my life. That's an informal mentor. Well, how do you start? How many of you want to be mentors to other people? Okay, 2 of you. That's great. I'm making progress here. Okay, so if you want to be a mentor, how do you get started doing that? Well, obviously, the first people that you want to mentor are the people in your D group, okay? But a D group meeting isn't really a mentoring opportunity. That's why we encourage you as a D group leader to be involved in the lives of your D group members, not just during the D group meeting, but also outside. So, first of all, make yourself available to the Lord. And then look for potential leaders. Look for people that are somehow God is calling them to a higher level of leadership. And then invite them to Starbucks. If not Starbucks, it could be coffee bean tea leaf, I know, great sacrifice. You may have to pay for a cup of coffee for them. But the idea is make ways to get together with them. Find a way to hang out with them. It doesn't have to be at Starbucks. If you're too cheap, mas mura yung sa McDo, so you can do that. And then when you get together with them, just ask them what's up in their life. What is God doing in their life? And then you encourage them by telling them that you believe that they have potential. Now, don't lie. If you look at them and say, walang pag-asa to, okay? Don't tell them that. But I'm not telling you to tell them that they have potential that you don't see in them. But all of us have gifts and abilities. I think all of us have potential for growth, and so it's up to us as a mentor to be able to spot what is it in this person's life that God could develop and use. And that's what we need to encourage them in. And then ask them, how can you help? Is there some way that you can help them in their development? So when you talk about informal mentoring, pray for opportunities to be a Barnabas to someone else. Maybe not even in your D group. Be open to God's prompting. Maybe you're hanging out with a friend and you notice that there's something going on in their life. You can see that as God's opportunity for you to do something. So be available for those divine appointments. And when you get those appointments, those times with somebody, start by asking questions. And we'll be talking a lot more about asking questions when we talk about coaching. But one of the best ways to really encourage people is ask them what God's doing in their life. Ask them what God has been teaching them. Just probe into their lives to find out how you can encourage them. And then share some of your own personal experiences. If you could relate to the things that they're going through, share some of the things that you have gone through that are similar. Tell them, may pag-asa, you'll get through this. Or maybe some experience that you had where God put you into a better position of leadership. For most of us, we want to encourage our D group members to become D group leaders, right? Okay, once again, 2 people want that. I'm doing so well tonight. And it's not always the same 2 people. That's great. We all want our D group members to become D group leaders. Remember, every member a discipler. So we need to look for opportunities to help our people to become leaders. Let me just share one thing. I know we're getting close to the time, but let me just share something. I happen to have been the dissertation advisor for Pastor Peter when he was doing his doctoral thesis. But it was really an interesting experience for me because the thesis that he did, the dissertation that he did, was about how we get to multiple generations of discipleship in CCF. It's a good study to figure out. So why is it that some people get to like 3rd, 4th, 5th generation, but other people, they get stuck at 1 generation? You understand what I'm talking about? You have your eternal D group, okay? They never become anything but your D group. So how do you get beyond that? And it was interesting because he studied many things: educational background, their spiritual life, their family life, even their financial situation, many different factors that he studied. And guess what he found out? What is the one thing that will encourage people to become multiple generational discipleship or disciplers? Can you imagine what it is? It was actually one of the things that both of you put on both sides. It's called intentionality. When you intentionally develop people to disciple other people, that's when they disciple other people. If you just leave it to chance and just pray and hope that people will become disciplers, generally, hindi mangyayari. But when you intentionally seek to develop people and you tell them, our expectation for you is that you're going to be discipling people. And not only are you going to disciple them, but your disciples are also going to disciple people. That's when you start seeing multiple generations. In the training that we're doing in India, where we have seen as many as 10, 12 generations of house churches that have been established. In the training, we say success is what happens at the 4th generation. Meaning if you are leading a D group, you're not successful yet. Even if your D group members are not yet are leading a D group, you are not yet successful. It is only when your D group leaders, or D group members, are leading a D group, who are leading a D group, who are leading a D group, that's when you are successful. Bigat yan, no? But it's not. Because actually, you're just training each generation to make disciples. Simply lang yan. You don't have to worry about the 4th generation as long as the DNA is in your next generation. So that's what we keep telling people, and it's amazing. It really works. And then share your experience, be available to talk again, and then check in for follow-up. Now, I never thought in all of my wildest dreams I would be quoting Jimi Hendrix in a... Some of you young people have no idea who this person is. But it was so good, I thought I would share it. Knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens. You know, sometimes we are very quick to tell people what to do. Next week we will be talking about this in coaching. But one of the best ways to mentor people is to ask questions. What is God doing in your life? Another thing, it's more or less the same. Confidence, like art, never comes from having all the answers. It comes from being open to all of the questions. So be open and listen and ask questions. Now, in the last part, in our Express, we are going to be having one final exercise. And this is where it really is, what are you going to do? We've said one of the most important things is getting your D group members to become D group leaders, right? That's what we want to see happen, at least for the 2 people that said yes. They want that to happen. Well, that's what we all want, right? So I want you to do this in your notes, is first list the names of at least 2 people, and you can list 5 or 10 if you want to, but at least 2 people you think have the potential to be D group leaders right now in your group that are not yet leading. Or if all of your people are already leading, think about the next generation. Who are people that you think have the potential to become leaders? Okay? Then in the second column, I want you to write down one step that you can take to begin to mentor them. Okay? First, identify them, and then with each of those that you identify, write down one step that you could do. Okay? Maybe it's go to Starbucks. Okay? If you like Starbucks, that's a good one. Maybe it's take them out witnessing together, you know, or set up an appointment together to be able to meet their family, to be able to share the gospel with them. Okay? Then take a few minutes to pray that God would begin working in them to make your potential mentees leaders, and that he would use you to help them get there. So take a few minutes just to do that. You've got that chart in your notes. List at least 2 people, then something that you will do to mentor them, and then pray for those people that you have put down in your list. Let me just ask you to do this. So in your groups, I want you to share with each other, first of all, what action steps will you take this week to begin mentoring? So that chart looked very theoretical. It's like, well, maybe I could do this, or maybe someday I will do that. But I want you now to decide this week, between now and the time we meet next Thursday, what steps will you take to be able to apply this, okay? So after you take a couple of those from your chart, I want you to write them down and then share those with your group. So maybe you make an asterisk by the ones that you want to do this week, okay? So choose 1 or 2 of the people, make an asterisk and say, this is the one that I want to do this week. And then share that with your group. What will you do this week that you will share with us next week that you will have done? Okay? So share in your group what you're going to do. And pray that you will be able to follow through on the action points. Something that we do in our D group, so you might want to try this, is if you can't remember all of the different prayer requests for everyone, at least pray for the people on your right side and on your left side. So each of you pray, so pray sabay-sabay, but at least pray for the person on your right and the person on your left.